Hello, everyone. My name is Chris Charbonneau. I am the Director of Advocacy and Engagement with My Future NC, and we are really excited to continue upon our innovation series with FAFSA completion. I've got the winners of our 2021 Innovation Grant with folks from Statesville High School. We've got Rose Botash, and she is with the College Advising Corps. And we also have Leslie Rucker, who is the 12th grade counselor at that high school. Welcome.
Thank you, Chris.
Hello.
So we are really excited to lift up many of our innovation grant winners in our inaugural year of the FAFSA Challenge. As you know, we are really trying to lift up the importance of FAFSA completion, ensuring that our students have a gateway and an opportunity to go and pursue education after high school. We're really excited to announce that you all at the mid of October reached a 65.9% FAFSA completion rate, and that was an 11.3% increase. That is just amazing, amazing, amazing. And we would love to share with many others, how did you do it? So Rose, I'm going to go ahead and start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So a few of the things that we really focused on last year were just kind of meeting students and families where they were. So at Statesville, we have a pretty diverse group of students and families from different backgrounds. Leslie, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's about 60% Black, 20% Hispanic or Latinx, and then
closer to a little bit higher, probably closer to 40 Hispanic.
40%, yeah. Mm-hmm. And then we have other students that identify as two or more races, or white or Asian. Yeah. And then there's a good amount of students who are first generation college students. So a lot of them don't have parents or other family members that have already graduated from college. We also have students who are not first gen students. So a lot of people are coming from different places, different backgrounds. And so we were just kind of trying to focus on meeting everyone where they were. So we would have different kinds of opportunities available for them to get whatever amount of assistance they needed. We did, I think, 8 events where we were available to help with financial aid. So we would help with filling out the FAFSA form, doing the North Carolina residency form, helping with applications if they needed it. And we did some of those sessions at the school. Those ones ended up being the most popular, but we also did some partnering with community members. So like we did some at the Armory, Boys and Girls Club, just trying to do different things and see what worked. And then we would also send out communications with just informational packets so they could fill the FAFSA out at home if they needed to, if that was going to be the easiest option for them, if they weren't comfortable coming in person. Or I did a lot of Zoom meetings or phone calls with family members and students trying to troubleshoot FAFSA and their FSA IDs. So really, we were just trying to reach out in any way that we could and cover all the bases so we could make sure people were getting what they needed.
So thank you for sharing more about your student populations. I think it's really important when we look at the ways in which we are serving such a diverse demographic population. And as we are seeing increasing shifts in our demographic populations, having that family outreach, we have heard from many other schools, from our students and families, how important that is to help them not only to navigate, but also to improve those communications. We've been hearing as a really big benefit between our students and family members. Leslie, do you want to share any additional pieces on some of the things that your whole school culture believes in and that what you've been able to employ?
Oh, yes. I would like to add, like Rose said, we had to be really creative and we had to kind of be proactive. So we started really early with our events. Our principal wanted us to kind of work on our relationship with the community. So when you hear us talk about the Boys and Girls Club and the Statesville Rec, he wanted to go into the neighborhoods where our kids live. So if they couldn't get to the school, maybe it's easier to just go down the street to this center to try to get the help. We be very hands-on with our kids. Repetition, having more than one way to reach out, because we had some kids that were at home virtual. We had a few that was in the building, and we had some that we just had to just get creative with and just meet with them wherever they were, like Rose said. And I think that's the biggest thing, is just meeting our kids where they were and being available and where they had access to us.
And a lot of students as well were, because they weren't coming into the building full time, some of them were like working full time, or it was just harder to get in touch with them. And I don't know if Leslie, you went, but I know that the school social worker and some of the counselors went on home visits to check in, and ended up bringing like some meals to people and just kind of making sure that their just basic necessities were being met as well. And then trying to reach out and get them back into the school setting too. So.
I think that I love that approach of really meeting students where they are and really leveraging your local community to where students already have relationships that they find credible and trustworthy. Can you talk a little bit about perhaps some of the data sources that you use to better, whether it's target your efforts or understand and have greater awareness of where you were on FAFSA completion?
Yeah, as a college advisor with College Advising Corps, I use the database that we have. It's called GRACE. So I track every interaction I have with students, and what we've worked on, where they are in their application process. And then also, like Leslie and I will finish the FAFSA through CFNC, Pro Center, Pro Tools. And last year I was checking pretty much every week to see who had finished, who still needed to do it, like if people had submitted it, but there were errors or something was missing. So just staying on top of that data with FAFSA completion, application completion. And then I also track my interactions with parents or family members. So if I'm seeing that, like, even if it's a student I've already met with, but they're still not really like getting things done, I might call a parent and just check in and say, hey, like, this is where your child is right now. And just wanted to make sure that you knew and understood like what the FAFSA is, what we need from you to get it done. And just make sure that that information was being communicated across the board as well. So yeah, we do track data. Students have to sign in to come meet with any of the counselors here or meet with me, just so the school also knows like who's meeting, and we can make sure that anyone that hasn't reached out themselves or been called up, like, we know that we still need to get to them. So
Leslie, anything to add to that before I ask the next question?
Yeah, I mean, we have senior meetings, and in the senior meeting, we make sure we do the senior survey where we get the parents' updated contact information and the student cell phone information. And that came in handy a lot of times when we couldn't reach on the regular numbers. We'll just go to the senior survey and like send a quick text message, send a call through that way where we'd be able to reach them.
yeah, and also helpful in their senior survey, they will say like what their plan is for after graduation. So coming into senior year, we already know if they're planning on enrolling in college or enlisting in the military or going straight into a job. From Statesville, it's usually about 50% of students that are enrolling in college. So it's not everyone. There's people doing lots of different things. So it's good to know that right away and plan and make sure that everyone knows what they're doing after they graduate.
I think what I've been hearing across the board is just data and contact information. And that is probably one of the single largest barriers sometimes in being able to reach students and reach their family members. I know that with College Advising Corps, one of the things that they have been able to employ kind of later in the year was a chatbot. And there is a lot of conversation all around the state as to how do we bring our communications into the 21st century. And, if we're really going to meet our students where they are, we're trying to learn a lot from, folks like College Advising Corps who have piloted a chatbot. Can you talk a little bit about that, just to illuminate for folks, what is a chatbot? How did it help you kind of reach students? And then you talked a little bit earlier about how oftentimes students aren't necessarily reachable just by the school day. We know that there are other hours of the day because of whether it be work commitments or other family obligations, or anything else that's going on in their life. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So with College Advising Corps, we already had an automatic text messaging system. So it sends out messages to parents or guardians, whoever's contact information we have, with just reminders about FAFSA, application deadlines, verifying, enrolling towards the end of the year. So we already had those automatic messages coming out, and the parents could always respond and ask questions, or text me anytime and ask questions. But last year we had the chatbot rollout. Chatbot's called Ari. And so essentially what Ari did, this is just the beginning of it, but it can answer any financial aid questions. So it has a database of stored answers already. So instead of just sending out reminders, it'll send out messages with questions for students, like, what part of have you done your FAFSA yet? And a student could respond with a question related to financial aid, and then the chatbot will automatically have an answer for them. So they're able to have more of a conversation with it, which means they can get their answers at any time. So if they're texting it at like 3 a.m. and I'm not awake to answer, Ari can respond. So it's definitely a good option for students to get information they need when we're not in school hours. And that's something we didn't have until towards the end of the year last year. So there definitely was a lot that we were doing, I think, as well outside of school hours. Like all of the financial aid events we hosted were after school. And I know that the counselors here were doing a lot of contact, trying to get in contact with people that was, through Facebook or just seeing people around in the community. So it was really, going above and beyond.
Yeah, I mean, I know here at My Future, we recognize that oftentimes our counselor caseloads are really high, and that ratio is oftentimes, when you talk about all the ways to meet students in all different hours of the day, not only are we advocating to have more counselors and college advisors, but recognizing there are differences in how we are helping to serve our students, particularly coming out of the pandemic. Leslie, would you mind sharing maybe some of the things that you've been observing and the ways in which you're looking at, this year a little bit differently in serving our students?
Yeah, so it's been a lot of changes. Like, for example, like when we would meet with seniors before the pandemic, say if they were struggling with grades or attendance, we would be able to sit down and have one meeting and then sign it and then go on. Pandemic happened. It's almost like a lot of change. The way they think changed. The way they look at school changed. So it's almost became like, okay, working kind of became more of a priority and school became secondary. So it's been a real task for us to get them back on that train to understand that school is a priority. It's very, very important. So instead of having just one meeting that it took back in the day, now we maybe have to meet with the same kid 3 and 4 times just to kind of get them back in the mode of understanding the importance of what's going on right now and getting school back on the forefront. So that's still work in progress. We're still pushing every day to get them to understand that, it's changed, but it's still important.
Yeah, well, thank you both for all that you are doing. I know that counselors and that relationship that you all have with our students is oftentimes, between our teachers and our counselors, really help our students to believe in themselves, no matter what pathway that they take. And we know that we are working to continue to expand to have multiple pathways. So thank you again, both for joining. We will be posting all of this information on the My Future NC website. We will also continue to lift up our FAFSA tracker around the state, where we are really working towards our 65% goal this year for FAFSA completion. So we are kicking off our 2022 FAFSA challenge in January that will run through the end of March. And I know that Statesville will be one of the ones to watch. So thank you again, and we will talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.